On December 13th, 1862, as the fog dissipated, Stonewall Jackson confronted the horrors of battle. What ensued was not merely a conflict, but a brutal display of courage amidst a nightmare of smoke and steel that challenges conventional narratives. The Union Army advanced not in small numbers, but as a formidable force of 55,000 soldiers, with cannon fire echoing as their lines faltered. In the midst of this turmoil, Jackson identified a critical vulnerability, a moment of dread that would astonish even the most seasoned historians. This account of Fredericksburg transcends mere statistics or tactics. It is a tale of men driven to their limits. A Georgia regiment stands resolute, fighting back to back as death encroaches. A general wounded and sinking into the mud inspires his men with his final words. An audacious counterattack unfolds, so fierce that it alters the course of the battle in mere minutes. What did Jackson observe that day? Was it a blunder or a stroke of genius? The reality has remained concealed within diaries and bloodied letters until now. Remain with us until the conclusion. What you are about to learn will forever change your perception of this battle. Before we proceed, please like and subscribe to our channel to support our community. By around 10 a.m., as the mist cleared, the enemy's formations became visible across the open terrain, mirroring our own battle lines and extending towards Fredericksburg. I estimated that approximately 55,000 men faced me directly. Pelham, leading a segment of Stuart's cavalry artillery, quickly engaged the enemy's artillery, igniting a vigorous skirmish that lasted nearly an hour. Shortly after Pelham vacated his position along the Port Royal Road as per orders, the enemy redirected their artillery fire towards the heights held by Lieutenant Colonel Walker and the wooded areas predominantly occupied by our troops. This bombardment seemed designed to elicit a response that could expose our troop locations or artillery placements. With no counteraction from us, the enemy appeared to believe that they would encounter little resistance in their attempt to capture the hill. Consequently, around 11 o'clock, they advanced along my flank, moving parallel to the Port Royal Road and approaching the route to Hamilton's Crossing. With Pelham's unit no longer present and their path clear, the enemy turned to face forward, marching in battle formation across the flat ground, directly towards Walker's position. Our artillery refrained from firing until the opposing forces were within 800 yards. At that point, 14 cannons fired simultaneously, unleashing a storm of projectiles and shells into their ranks, causing them to first stop, then waver, and ultimately retreat in chaos. Around 1 o'clock, the main assault began with rapid and intense artillery fire. Protected by this fierce and accurate bombardment, their infantry and significant forces advanced, seeking partial cover in a stretch of woods beyond the railroad. Batteries on our right flank targeted their sides with devastating precision. Although visibly rattled by our swift and focused cannon fire, the Federal troops, primarily from Franklin's Grand Division and supported by elements of Hooker's Grand Division, regained their composure and continued their advance. Closing to point-blank range, they faced a deadly crossfire of musketry and artillery, turning the encounter into a fierce and bloody battle. Despite suffering heavy casualties, they pressed forward, taking advantage of a gap left by General A.P. Hill between Archer's and Lane's positions, with overwhelming numbers flooding through this opening, flanking Lane's right and Archer's left. Under simultaneous assault from both the front and rear, the 14th Tennessee and 19th Georgia regiments of Archer's brigade, along with the entirety of Lane's brigade, were forced to retreat. This withdrawal, however, came after a valiant and steadfast defense, as Archer's brigade confronted significant danger. The right flank, pivoting to address the threat, fought with resolute determination, effectively delaying the enemy's advance until reinforcements arrived. The brigade commanded by General Thomas, as previously noted, advanced courageously and joined forces with the 7th and elements of the 18th North Carolina from Lane's brigade, successfully repelling the Federal troops that had penetrated Lane's defenses. Concurrently, a considerable enemy force infiltrated the woods behind the positions held by Lane's and Archer's brigades, engaging with Gregg's brigade. Taken by surprise, his riflemen became disorganized. While attempting to rally his troops, Brigadier General Maxcy Gregg was mortally wounded at the forefront. General Gregg exemplified valor and dignity, embodying noble principles and steadfast honor. His significant contributions to the fight for independence were profound, and his premature death represented a significant loss to the nation. Colonel Hamilton, now in command of the brigade, promptly addressed the situation. With the remaining 4 regiments and 1 company of sharpshooters, he launched a vigorous counterattack. The enemy's hold on their newly acquired positions was brief. The second line quickly reinforced the first. Lawton's brigade, initially led by Colonel Atkins and subsequently by Colonel Evans, along with Trimble's brigade under R.F. Hoke, and Early's brigade directed by Colonel Walker, all operating under the overall command of Brigadier General Early, alongside the 47th and 22nd Virginia regiments from Colonel Brockenbrough's forces, advanced with relentless energy to support the front lines. On Taliaferro's flank, the 2nd Virginia of Paxton's brigade engaged a segment of the enemy, who retreated after minimal resistance. The confrontation within the woods was swift and decisive. The enemy's advance was effectively stopped. After suffering significant losses, they withdrew from the forest to the railway. The 2 regiments commanded by Brockenbrough, namely the 1st Tennessee and the 5th Alabama Battalion, along with the 3 brigades led by Colonels Hoke, Walker, and Atkinson, pursued the retreating Federal forces to the railway, where the enemy briefly maintained their position. Hoke and Atkinson then initiated a charge against them, causing substantial casualties and capturing many prisoners. Their momentum did not wane. Fueled by a fervor that exemplifies their remarkable bravery and commitment, this small yet resolute force relentlessly pursued the fleeing enemy until they advanced into the range of Federal artillery and infantry fire, where further advancement would have been a reckless endeavor. During this audacious assault, Atkinson suffered serious injuries and was taken prisoner by the enemy. Colonel E.P. Lawton, the brigade's assistant adjutant general, despite being injured early in the advance when his horse fell, continued on foot, rallying the brigade with heroic resolve until he sustained a fatal injury. On the far left flank, the day was marked by significant events. Earlier, the enemy had unleashed 16 cannons against the left, which later increased to 24. The commanding officers followed orders, refraining from firing until Federal skirmishers and main forces approached the positions held by Captains Davidson and Brockenbrough. These assaults were quickly repelled with canister fire, but the artillery's positions, now exposed, attracted intense enemy bombardment. Our batteries responded with vigorous counterfire. When Captain Raines's battery malfunctioned due to defective ammunition, it was withdrawn. Captain Latimer, the acting chief of artillery for the division, was instructed to move further forward and to the left. These final guns were operated with skill, enduring heavy fire from skirmishers, yet compelling them to retreat. The precise and rapid volleys inflicted considerable casualties. As the Federal infantry advanced, a decision was made to withdraw Brockenbrough's batteries and reposition them in front of the railroad before enemy forces could capture the wooded area to the right and rear, a position that the adversary soon breached. The retreat was safeguarded by Lieutenant Colonel Hill of the 7th North Carolina. The enemy, repelled on all fronts, quickly reorganized their formations and began to prepare for a renewed assault. I delayed for a while, anticipating their advance. But when no movement occurred, I resolved, if it was prudent, to take the initiative myself. The opposing artillery was positioned so effectively that advancing our troops across the exposed plain posed significant risks. However, the potential benefits of a successful offensive appeared compelling enough to justify preparations. To reduce risk, artillery would precede the infantry, and the operation was postponed until dusk to allow for a withdrawal under the cover of night if necessary. Unexpected delays hindered readiness until late evening. The leading artillery piece had scarcely moved 100 yards beyond the tree line when enemy cannons erupted once more, bombarding our front with such overwhelming fire that I deemed it essential to abandon the planned maneuver. By nightfall, the fields were stained red. Thousands lay fallen, yet Jackson's report deemed it a success, a victory forged in fire and desperation. But one must ponder, at what cost? What tormented him in the silence following the cessation of cannon fire? The breach in Hill's line? Gregg's final breath? Or the unsettling reality that this victory was less about tactics and more a perilous gamble with death itself? The official documentation indicates a structured withdrawal. However, Jackson's aides described a scene of chaos, with officers shouting commands to fix bayonets in response to the threat in the woods. This raises questions about the discrepancies in accounts. Why did Jackson choose to conceal the most troubling moments of Fredericksburg, and what insights did he possess that others sought to obscure? The journals, correspondence, and fabrications tell a deeper tale. This narrative transcends mere historical fact. It resembles a ghost story, a riddle with missing elements. Hidden within these obscurities lies the most profound secret of Stonewall Jackson. Thank you for watching.